Guys, while we're talking about penalty abatement, let's talk about reasonable cause. Now, first time abatement is an administrative program by the IRS, very limited and generally would only apply to any, first year if they hadn't been penalized for the three prior. Reasonable cause is where you're going to argue why the client shouldn't be penalized. And this is where, if you have a non-filer, you have multiple years, this is going to be what you're going to end up dealing with. The thing to know about reasonable cause is the IRS is going to look at why was it that the taxpayer was unable to comply. So usually what they look at, health emergencies, disaster, that kind of thing. So the facts here are going to become critical and documenting them are going to become critical. So for instance, um, one argument obviously is the whole medical issue. I had a client that was severely injured in a car accident, suffered brain trauma, and was diagnosed with a condition that prevents them from dealing with details and that kind of stuff. Finances being one of it. And this was a tax lawyer, by the way, who didn't file for about 4 years and didn't pay. And they came to me, tax lawyer didn't file, didn't pay. I'm like, yeah, we're not getting penalty abatement here until I heard the story. She's in a terrible accident. Husband abandons the family. She has two little kids, has to go back to work early because she needs to make a living now, and um, has this condition. We documented, all the medical documentation, the accident, the abandonment by the husband. We also got articles in the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, about people that have this condition and how they can't handle their finances. Submitted all of this. The IRS abated 110,000 in penalties for all 4 years. So it really comes down to documentation. Um, what I will warn you though is, and the way to approach this is put yourself in the IRS's perspective. What will not work, what I want to warn you about, because a lot of people come to us when they've already been rejected. They filed for abatement, it's been rejected. So now they come to us to handle the appeal. I want to see what was submitted. First of all, I want to make sure what I say is consistent. And if there's something that maybe the client didn't mention but was in the letter, I'd like to know about it. More often than not, here's what we read. The taxpayer hired a CPA to handle their return. They clearly acted reasonably and is asking for reasonable cause. Three sentences. Think about it from the IRS's perspective. You've just told me nothing. So you hired a CPA that apparently didn't get something filed. Does this CPA have a background in taxes? Many CPAs don't do taxes. They're audit financial controller types. So first of all, who's this CPA? Do they have a background in tax? Why did you think that they had filed it? Did they email you saying, yep, all filed, all good? Were you supposed to get a refund? Did the refund never come through? Or were you supposed to pay? Were you wondering why the payment never got made? Right? In other words, think about it from the IRS's perspective. Now, let me give you an example of that same letter from that situation. And what had happened is they'd hired a CPA. The CPA ended up getting COVID and never filed the return. And, uh, you know, someone in their office said, oh, yeah, all returns are filed. And the money should come out in the next several months. And of course, the client forgot about it. And it wasn't a lot of money. It was like 7,000, 8,000, something like that. Uh, which is a lot of money, but in the scheme of things, when you're running a business and everything, it never hit their radar. Now, what about this? The taxpayer hired a CPA, so and so. Mr. So and so had a long history of doing tax returns, was very well thought of. At one point, had chaired the Connecticut Society of CPAs, was highly recommended, and had filed the three prior years without a problem. The clients received the e-filing authorization, were told that it was filed, see the attached email, and that the money would come out in several months. During those months, as it turns out, one of the taxpayer's children was in a car accident. They never thought or realized that the money wasn't taken. It wasn't brought to their attention until they went to deal with their bank. It was a refinance, and they asked for copies of the returns, did the transcript thing, and the banker running their credit, came back and said, "Can we get a copy of your returns? The IRS says you didn't file one." You know, that so then of course they get the return file, they get hit for because they owed money, they got hit for the failure to file penalty, failure to pay penalty. It's a couple $1,000. And but here you're painting a picture. We hired someone, long history. We'd already worked with them a few years, everything was fine. As it turns out, they got COVID. Somebody in their office was trying to handle it, told them everything had been taken care of. Now, why didn't they see the money was gone? Well, they were told a few months. During that time, they had another personal emergency come up. And if you can document that, someone at the IRS would be like, especially, by the way, I always point out these taxpayers have a great history. They've never not filed. So the person at the IRS say, you know what? I have a taxpayer that has been trying to comply, hired a CPA, yep, clearly a tax professional, gave them everything, was told it was filed. Now, why didn't they notice the money wasn't gone? Oh, geez, the son's in an accident. They had to fly out to California to be with him. It's reasonable, hence reasonable cause. The person at the IRS can understand why this happened. So when you're going to go for reasonable cause penalty abatement, documentation and explaining what happened. I was told by a former senior partner when I was started doing this that we had everything together. He said, I want you to write this up. And he beat it up over and over again. We're rewriting it. I mean, I basically wrote an opinion on this. We went to the hearing. The appeals officer had read it back when we did hearings in person 20 years ago and agreed with us. We walked out, and as we walked out, Bob looked at me and said, Eric, that's why we did this. Our job, what we're being paid for, and we get paid a lot, what we're being paid for is to make sure that the IRS person on the other side agrees with us. Our job is to make their job agreeing with us easy. That's why we did what we did, and that's why we do what we do. All right. When I submit anything, offer and compromise, penalty abatement, appeal letter, you name it, I write this up and give them everything that that person needs in front of them to agree with me. Don't make them go looking in the file. The taxpayer has given everything to the auditor. We don't know what they did. It's in the file. This person is working remote. They have stuff going on in their own life. They've got a huge case inventory. Don't make their job to go find your stuff. We submitted everything to the auditor. We don't understand why they didn't accept it. We've included copies here for you so that you have it in front of you and you can see what we see and why the client should be given this deduction or why the adjustment is wrong or why we deserve penalty abatement or why the offer should have been accepted or whatever, right? Make their job easy. If you make their job easy, you're going to win more often. And that carries over. And you know what? When you help people, they're going to refer more people. This is about practice building, but it's really about understanding the psychology of the people on the other side. And our job, my clients are hiring me to win, not just kind of push the paper and see what happens. So, given them what we're charging and they want us to win, this is how you win. All right. Reasonable cause, critical, the facts, the timing, the dates, and the documentation matter. It's not well, they hired a CPA and they were reasonable. You haven't said anything. You haven't given the person at the IRS anything. And if you figure they've got, picture this, it's electronic tape, but picture they have 200 files sitting on a desk. How much time do you think what is that? You clearly didn't bother to give them anything. And they don't have the time and the effort. Frankly, they don't care. They got too many other cases. You'll lose. Next. That's not what my clients are paying me for. They're paying me to win. Make their job easy agreeing with you. Documentation, documentation, documentation.